Admiral Kim Soo-jin's boots echoed against the polished metal floor as she paced before the enormous holographic display that dominated the Terran Defense Council chambers. The blue-white glow of the projection cast sharp shadows across her weathered face, highlighting the tension lines that had deepened over her 20-year military career. She had read the Empire's message 3 times now, each word burning deeper into her memory with every pass. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as dozens of Earth's most senior military officials and scientists filled the curved rows of seats. Outside the reinforced windows, the sprawling cityscape of New Geneva stretched toward the horizon, its towering spires reaching up toward the stars that had once seemed so welcoming to humanity. Now those same stars harbored a threat unlike anything their species had ever faced. Vorthak, the Empire's diplomatic envoy, stood at the center of the chamber like a nightmare made flesh. His reptilian form towered nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that shifted from deep green to an oily black, depending on how the light caught them. 4 arms extended from his broad torso, each ending in clawed hands that clicked nervously against each other. His elongated head swayed slightly as he spoke, yellow eyes with vertical pupils scanning the human faces that surrounded him. 30 standard days, Vorthak hissed, his forked tongue flicking out between razor-sharp teeth. The universal translator device attached to his throat crackled with static, giving his words an otherworldly quality that made several of the younger officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. The Galactic Empire demands complete withdrawal from all Outer Rim territories. Your colonies on Kepler 442b, Ross 128b, and the entire Proxima Centauri system must be abandoned. Failure to comply will result in the total eradication of your species. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Kim could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears as the weight of the ultimatum settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. Around her, she saw the faces of men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity's expansion into the galaxy, now confronted with the possibility that all their work might be for nothing. Captain Lee Minho stepped forward from his position among the assembled officers. His young face was pale but determined, his hands clasped firmly behind his back in perfect military posture. At 28, he was one of the youngest captains in the fleet, but his tactical brilliance had earned him a place in these crucial discussions. "And if we refuse?" Lee asked, his voice steady despite the magnitude of the situation. Vorthak's head tilted at an unnatural angle, and a sound that might have been laughter escaped his throat. "Then the combined fleet of 1,000 worlds will reduce your colonies to cosmic dust. Your cities will burn. Your ships will be scattered like leaves in a stellar wind. The Empire has crushed civilizations far more advanced than yours, human. Species that had mastered technologies you cannot even comprehend." The alien's forearms spread wide in a gesture that seemed both threatening and dismissive. "Your primitive fusion drives, your crude projectile weapons, your laughably simple defense grids, they are nothing against the might of Imperial battlecruisers. Each of our dreadnoughts carries enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Our fighter squadrons number in the millions. Our battle stations are the size of your moons." Several officers began murmuring among themselves, but Admiral Kim raised her hand for silence. Her eyes found Dr. Park Ji-woo sitting in the front row, his weathered face carefully neutral despite the storm she knew was raging behind his dark eyes. As head of humanity's most classified research division, Park knew secrets that could change the course of this confrontation, but for now, they had to maintain the facade of a species caught off guard. Dr. Park gave her the slightest nod, so subtle that anyone not watching for it would have missed it entirely. The gesture confirmed what she already knew: their preparations were ready, decades of careful planning about to be put to the ultimate test. "The Empire is generous," Vorthak continued, his translator crackling with static bursts. "We offer you the chance to retreat peacefully to your birth world. Earth will be designated a protected reserve. Your species will be allowed to exist, though your expansion into our galaxy must end permanently." "Your galaxy?" Captain Lee's voice carried a note of challenge that made several senior officers tense. Vorthak's yellow eyes fixed on the young captain with predatory intensity. For 10,000 years, the Empire has brought order to the chaos of space. We have united countless species under our banner, brought peace to systems that knew only war, prosperity to worlds that struggled in poverty. Humanity's brief expansion represents barely a moment in galactic history. Yet already you have disrupted established trade routes, claimed resources that belong to older, worthier species. Admiral Kim stepped forward, her movement deliberate and controlled. Every eye in the chamber turned to her as she approached the towering alien diplomat. "Tell your empire," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded respect across a dozen star systems, that humanity will consider their generous offer. The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but they were necessary. Around the chamber she could see the confusion and barely contained outrage on the faces of her officers. They didn't understand why she wasn't defying the ultimatum immediately, but they would learn soon enough. Vorthak's head bobbed in what might have been approval. "Wisdom, Admiral. The Empire values species that can recognize their limitations. You have 30 standard days to begin evacuation procedures. Imperial monitors will be watching to ensure compliance." As the alien diplomat turned to leave, his massive form moving with surprising grace, Dr. Park rose from his seat and approached the Admiral. The scientist's face showed none of the excitement she expected, but his eyes held a gleam that spoke of anticipation. "Should we activate protocol?" "Omega?" he asked quietly. His words meant only for her ears. Admiral Kim watched as Vorthak disappeared through the chamber's main entrance, probably heading back to whatever sleek Imperial vessel had brought him to Earth. Around them, officers were beginning to stand and move about, their voices rising in urgent discussion about evacuation plans and defensive preparations that they all knew would be useless against the Empire's described fleet. "Not yet," she whispered back to Dr. Park, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Let them think we're afraid." Dr. Park Jiwoo's fingers danced across the holographic control panel with practiced precision, each touch sending encrypted commands racing through quantum communication channels to the farthest reaches of human space. The underground facility beneath Seoul's mountains had been his second home for the past 15 years, its sterile corridors and humming machinery housing secrets that could reshape the balance of galactic power. The main display showed a three-dimensional map of human territory, with dozens of green dots beginning to pulse in steady rhythm. Each dot represented a facility that the galaxy believed to be nothing more than civilian infrastructure. Mining operations, research stations, agricultural colonies, all hiding their true purpose behind carefully constructed facades. "Activation sequence initiated," announced Dr. Park's assistant, Lieutenant Ko Yun-ha, her young face illuminated by the soft blue glow of her workstation. "Facility Alpha 7 on New Busan is coming online. Power core stable at 97% efficiency." Deep beneath the surface of humanity's most distant colonies, massive generators that had been disguised as geothermal plants began channeling energy into weapon systems that defied conventional physics. Particle accelerators the size of subway tunnels started their warm-up cycles, while quantum computers began running battle simulations against every known Imperial ship design. 300,000 kilometers away, Commander Choi Hyun-wook stood in the command center of Lunar Station, watching as status reports flooded in from across human space. The massive facility built into the Moon's south pole had been humanity's primary military headquarters for decades, its true size hidden beneath what appeared to be a simple research outpost. "All outer rim stations are reporting green status," Commander Choi announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Banks of monitors showed Imperial scout ships maintaining their positions at the edge of human territory, their sleek hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. "The Empire's vessels are keeping their distance, probably analyzing our defensive capabilities." Colonel Song Mi-young moved between the tactical displays like a chess master studying her board. Her fingers traced paths through three-dimensional star maps, calculating firing solutions and defensive patterns that existed only in the most classified military databases. The colonel had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, developing strategies for fighting an enemy with overwhelming technological superiority. "Good," she replied, her eyes never leaving the display showing their outer colonies. Let them think our mining platforms are just mining platforms. Every scan they take of our civilian installations is feeding them exactly the data we want them to have. The mining platform orbiting Ross 128b looked like any other industrial facility, crude, utilitarian, designed purely for function over form. Imperial sensors would detect standard ore processing equipment, basic life support systems, and minimal, defensive armaments. What they wouldn't see were the massive railgun arrays hidden within the asteroid processing units, or the swarm of autonomous combat drones disguised as maintenance robots. Meanwhile, 400 light-years away on research, Station Kepler-7, Dr. Yoon Tae-jin was putting the finishing touches on humanity's most ambitious project. The station appeared to be studying the atmospheric conditions of gas giants. Its sensor arrays pointed toward the swirling storms of the system's largest planet. In reality, those sensors were mapping Imperial fleet movements, while the station's quantum computers ran the most sophisticated combat algorithms ever created. Neural network integration at 98%, reported Dr. Yoon to his small team of specialists. The laboratory around them hummed with the sound of processing units that could analyze enemy tactics and develop countermeasures in real time. The adaptive systems are learning from every Imperial transmission we intercept. The secret weapon wasn't a gun or a bomb, but something far more dangerous: artificial intelligence that could study any enemy's fighting style and develop perfect counters within minutes. Every Imperial tactical manual, every recorded battle, every strategic doctrine had been fed into the system over the years, creating a digital mind that understood galactic warfare better than any living strategist. Captain Nam Soo-bin's reconnaissance ship, the Quiet Storm, drifted silently at the very edge of human space, its hull coated with stealth materials that made it nearly invisible to Imperial sensors. Her small crew of specialists monitored every Imperial probe vessel that approached their territory, recording their scanning patterns and transmission frequencies. "They're getting bolder," reported her sensor operator, Ensign Kwon Min-jun, as another Imperial scout ship moved closer to the human boundary. The alien vessel was a sleek Predator-like craft, its hull covered in sensor arrays that swept space with invisible beams of energy. That cruiser just launched 6 probe drones toward the New Sol colony. Captain Nam watched the tactical display as the small Imperial drones approached one of humanity's most important settlements. To all appearances, New Sol was a thriving, agricultural world, its orbital facilities dedicated to food production and civilian transport. The Imperial probes would detect exactly what they expected: farms, processing plants, and civilian shuttles. "They're scanning our defenses," Captain Nam reported through encrypted channels back to Earth. "Energy signatures are being transmitted back to their main fleet. The probes are cataloging every apparent weakness in our defensive grid." What the Imperial sensors couldn't detect were the weapons platforms hidden inside what appeared to be grain silos, or the fact that every civilian transport was actually a heavily armed gunship waiting for activation codes. The agricultural processing plants concealed manufacturing facilities that had been producing advanced weaponry for years. Back on Earth, Dr. Park monitored the intelligence gathering with satisfaction. Each Imperial scan was revealing more about their enemy's capabilities, while feeding them false information about humanity's true strength. The deception had taken decades to prepare, requiring thousands of people to maintain perfect security, while building a secret military infrastructure across dozens of worlds. "Perfect," Dr. Park said, his weathered face creasing into a grim smile as he watched the Imperial probe data being analyzed by his computers. "They're seeing exactly what we want them to see: standard defensive grids, primitive weapons, scattered colonies with minimal military capability." The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity's greatest strength had always been underestimation. Throughout their history, humans had been dismissed as weak or primitive by stronger enemies, only to reveal hidden depths when pushed to their limits. Now, on a galactic scale, they were about to demonstrate that lesson once again. Lieutenant Ko looked up from her station with barely contained excitement. "All facilities report ready status, Doctor. We can go from peaceful colonies to full military. Deployment in less than 6 hours." Dr. Park nodded, knowing that somewhere in the depths of space, an Imperial fleet was making final preparations to crush what they believed to be a defenseless species. They had no idea that humanity's entire civilization had become a trap. Carefully, baited and ready to spring. The next phase would test whether decades of secret preparation could overcome the military might of 1,000 worlds. But for now, the Empire's confidence was humanity's greatest weapon. Fleet Admiral Crexmore stood on the command bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Eternal Dominion, his 6 arms crossed behind his back as he gazed out at the vast armada spread before him. The bridge stretched nearly 200 meters from end to end, filled with hundreds of alien crew members from dozens of conquered species, all working in perfect coordination under Imperial discipline. The dreadnought itself was a monument to Imperial engineering, stretching 15 kilometers from bow to stern and bristling with enough firepower to reduce entire star systems to rubble. Its hull was composed of neutronium-enhanced armor that could withstand direct hits from stellar plasma cannons, while its weapons batteries included planet-cracking siege torpedoes and reality-warping void lances. Around the Eternal Dominion, nearly 1,000 Imperial warships hung in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like deadly jewels against the backdrop of space. Sleek battlecruisers with hulls like curved blades, massive carrier vessels launching clouds of fighter craft, and specialized siege platforms designed for planetary bombardment all waited for their admiral's command. Intelligence reports indicate primitive human defenses, reported Commander Thelgax, a 4-armed insectoid creature whose chitinous exoskeleton clicked as he moved between data stations. His compound eyes processed multiple data streams simultaneously, analyzing the pathetic, defensive capabilities of humanity's outer colonies. Their weapons technology appears to be at least 3 centuries behind Imperial standard. Basic fusion reactors, crude projectile weapons, and minimal shield generators. Crexmore's primary head nodded with satisfaction, while his secondary head studied tactical displays showing human territory. As a member of the Zefkari species, he possessed the natural ability to process multiple information streams at once, making him one of the Empire's most effective fleet commanders. His victories against the rebellious Crystalline Confederacy and the stubborn Metal Worlds had earned him this assignment to crush humanity's brief expansion. "Begin the assault," he ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded the destruction of entire civilizations. "Target their outer colonies first. I want these humans to watch their frontier settlements burn before we move on their core worlds." The Imperial fleet began its advance, massive engines creating rifts in space-time as they accelerated toward human territory. Fighter squadrons poured from carrier bays like swarms of metallic insects, their pilots eager to claim victory against what promised to be an easy target. The first wave of Imperial ships approached the human colony of New Busan, expecting to find the same pathetic defenses their scouts had reported. The planet appeared to be a typical frontier settlement, with modest orbital facilities and what looked like hastily constructed defense platforms orbiting at standard defensive positions. Captain Oh Sung-ho stood in the command center of defense, Platform Alpha 7, watching the approaching Imperial fleet through enhanced optical sensors. The platform looked like nothing more than a converted cargo station, its hull scarred and weathered from years of apparent civilian use. Hidden beneath that deceptive exterior, however, lay weapons systems that represented the pinnacle of human innovation. "Enemy fleet approaching at full attack formation," reported Lieutenant Bae Yoon-ji from her position at the tactical console. The young officer's hands moved steadily across her controls, bringing online systems that had been waiting years for this moment. 47 Imperial vessels in the first wave, led by 3 battlecruisers. The Imperial ships moved with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Their formation was textbook perfect, designed to overwhelm primitive defenses through sheer firepower and coordinated assault tactics that had crushed resistance across 1,000 worlds. "Activating defensive systems," announced Lieutenant Bae, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. What happened next defied every Imperial expectation. The humble-looking defense platform suddenly blazed with energy as weapon systems that shouldn't have existed powered up. Particle beam arrays that had been disguised as communication dishes swiveled toward the approaching fleet, while missile launchers concealed within what appeared to be cargo bays opened to reveal payloads unlike anything in Imperial databases. The first shots from the human platforms struck Imperial shields with devastating effect. Instead of the expected minimal damage from primitive weapons, the Empire's advanced deflector screens began failing under attacks that seemed to adapt and intensify with each hit. Commander Veltar, leading the Imperial assault from his battle cruiser, Iron Talon watched in growing confusion as his ship's shields fluctuated wildly. "What kind of weapons are these?" he demanded of his weapons officer, a tentacled creature whose expertise covered every known military technology in the galaxy. "Unknown energy signature," the officer replied, panic creeping into his translated voice. "The beam frequency is shifting constantly, finding weaknesses in our shield harmonics that shouldn't be possible to detect." The human defense platforms were doing something that violated everything the Empire knew about warfare. Their weapons were learning, analyzing Imperial defensive systems in real time and adapting their attacks to exploit every discovered weakness. Each shot was more effective than the last, as artificial intelligence systems processed battle data and optimized their targeting solutions. Imperial fighter squadrons that had expected to face obsolete point defense systems instead encountered swarms of automated defensive drones that moved with impossible coordination. The human drones fought like a single organism, each unit instantly sharing tactical data with every other unit in the swarm. Squadron leader Sheathmar watched in horror as his elite pilots were systematically outmaneuvered by machines that seemed to predict their every move. "They're anticipating our attack patterns," he reported over the communications channel. "It's like they know our tactics better than we do." Back on the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Admiral Crexmore stared at the tactical displays in growing disbelief. His first wave of ships, which should have swept aside human defenses in minutes, was instead taking heavy casualties from weapons that improved their effectiveness with every exchange. "Impossible," Crexmore snarled, his secondary head turning, to glare at Commander Thelgax. "How are these primitives countering our technology? Your intelligence report said they possessed nothing more advanced than basic fusion weapons." The insectoid commander's compound eyes flickered nervously as damage reports flooded in from the assault fleet. 3 Imperial battlecruisers had already lost primary shields, while 2 destroyer squadrons were reporting critical damage to their propulsion systems. "The readings must be incorrect," Thelgax clicked, his exoskeleton rattling with anxiety. No species at their technological level should possess adaptive combat systems. Such technology requires quantum processing capabilities that take millennia to develop. But the evidence was undeniable. The human defense platforms were not only holding their ground against overwhelming odds, they were actually pushing back the Imperial assault. Weapons that should have been easily overwhelmed were instead demonstrating tactical flexibility that surpassed even the Empire's most advanced military systems. 300 light-years away, Commander Kim Da-Yun monitored the battle from the hidden command center buried deep beneath Earth's surface. Banks of quantum computers processed real-time battle data, feeding tactical updates to every human defensive position across the galaxy. "Phase 1 complete," she announced to her staff, unable to suppress a smile as the Empire's confidence began to crack like ice under pressure. Imperial casualties are exceeding their worst-case projections. They still have no idea what's coming. The true scope of humanity's preparation remained hidden. What the Empire was experiencing was merely the first layer of a defensive strategy that had been decades in the making. Every human world, every orbital platform, every seemingly civilian facility was part of an interconnected military network that would reveal its full capabilities only when the time was right. As the first Imperial ships began retreating from New Busan in disorder, Fleet Admiral Crexmore realized that his easy conquest had become something far more dangerous, a war against an enemy that had turned deception into an art form. The moment had finally arrived. Across human space, from the ice-covered mining worlds, of the Outer Rim to the bustling trade hubs near Sol, a single encrypted signal pulsed through quantum communication networks. In response to that signal, humanity's greatest deception began to unravel, revealing the true face of human military might. Admiral Ryu Jae-sung stood in the command center of Orbital Platform 1, a massive structure that hung in Earth's upper atmosphere like a metallic moon. For decades, the platform had masqueraded as a civilian space elevator terminal, processing cargo and passengers between Earth's surface and the outer colonies. Now, as blast shields retracted and weapon ports opened, its true nature became clear. "All stations execute Operation Reversal," Admiral Ryu commanded, his voice carrying across secure channels to every human installation in the galaxy. The transformation was breathtaking to witness. On the agricultural world of New Hokkaido, what appeared to be grain silos suddenly split open along hidden seams, revealing towering missile batteries that rose from underground chambers. Each silo contained enough firepower to cripple an Imperial battlecruiser, their targeting systems already locked onto approaching enemy vessels. In the asteroid belt around Kepler 438, mining platforms that had spent years harvesting precious metals began their metamorphosis. Ore processing units folded away to expose massive railgun arrays, while cargo bays disgorged swarms of combat drones that had been disguised as maintenance robots. The asteroids themselves had been hollowed out and converted into fortress bases, their surfaces bristling with weapon emplacements that had been carefully camouflaged to look like natural rock formations. Captain Han Bo-ram commanded what the Imperial fleet had catalogued as Cargo Convoy Delta 7, a collection of 20 bulk freighters, supposedly carrying agricultural supplies between colonies. As her ships approached the main Imperial formation, she couldn't help but smile at how thoroughly they had fooled the enemy. "All vessels, weapons free," she announced over the squadron channel. The transformation of her cargo ships was spectacular. Hull plates slid away to reveal weapon bays that had been hidden for years, while false superstructures collapsed to expose sleek warship hulls underneath. What the Empire had dismissed as slow, defenseless cargo haulers suddenly became predators, armed with experimental weapons that human scientists had been developing in secret. The lead ship of Han's squadron, the False Dawn, opened fire with its primary weapon system, a focused antimatter beam that could punch through neutronium armor like tissue paper. The beam struck an Imperial dreadnought amidships, cutting completely through its hull and causing secondary explosions that lit up space like a miniature star. "Enemy flagship taking critical damage," Captain Han reported, watching as the massive Imperial vessel began breaking apart under the devastating assault. Their shields didn't even slow our antimatter lance. Across human space, similar scenes were playing out as civilian installations revealed their true military nature. Research stations deployed gravity wells that trapped Imperial ships in crushing fields of artificial gravity, while communications arrays transformed into quantum disruptor cannons that could scramble enemy electronics from light years away. The colony world of New Seoul, Commander Seo Young-min had been waiting for this moment for 5 years. Her civilian security force had trained relentlessly for urban warfare against technologically superior enemies, turning every city block into a potential battlefield and every building into a fortress. When Imperial drop pods began raining down on the capital city, the aliens inside expected to face frightened colonists armed with basic weapons. Instead, they encountered human soldiers who fought with tactics that no Imperial military academy had ever taught their students how to counter. "Hostile landing forces neutralized," Commander Seo announced over her communicator, watching as the last Imperial ground unit fell to her urban warfare specialists. They never adapted to our tactics. Their battle doctrine assumes open battlefield engagements, not close-quarters combat in urban environments. The Imperial ground forces had been trained to fight conventional armies in traditional formations. They had no experience dealing with humans who used the city itself as a weapon, turning sewers into ambush routes and skyscrapers into sniper nests. Every street corner became a trap, every building entrance a potential kill zone. Fleet Admiral Crexmore watched the tactical displays aboard his flagship with growing horror as his supposedly invincible armada began crumbling around him. Ship after ship disappeared from his screens, destroyed by weapons that shouldn't have existed, and tactics that defied every principle of galactic warfare. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical officer, a slug-like creature whose species had served the Empire for centuries. "These humans were supposed to be primitive. Our intelligence indicated they possessed nothing more advanced than basic fusion technology." The tactical officer's eye stalks swiveled nervously as more Imperial vessels vanished from the display. "Admiral, their deception was complete. Every installation we scanned, every ship we catalogued, every defensive position we analyzed, it was all false information. They've been preparing for this war for decades." The scope of human preparation was staggering. What the Empire had seen, as a loose collection of frontier colonies, was actually a unified military network that spanned dozens of star systems. Mining operations had been cover for weapons manufacturing, research stations had been developing advanced military technology, and civilian transports had been carrying military supplies to hidden bases throughout human space. Even more disturbing was how effectively human tactics countered Imperial military doctrine. The Empire's strategies had been developed over millennia of conquest, refined through countless campaigns against dozens of species. But humans fought differently, adapting their tactics in real time and exploiting weaknesses that Imperial commanders didn't even know they had. Captain Yon Sang-woo, commanding the defensive fleet around the colony world of New Kyoto, demonstrated this adaptability as he engaged an Imperial battle group. His ships moved in patterns that confused enemy targeting systems, using unpredictable formations that kept Imperial gunners off balance. "They're trying to box us in with their standard encirclement maneuver," he reported to his squadron. "Switch to Formation Chaos 7, and let's show them why human unpredictability beats alien precision." His ships scattered in what appeared to be random directions, only to converge on the Imperial formation from unexpected angles. The enemy commanders, trained to fight predictable opponents, couldn't adapt quickly enough to counter human creativity. The Terra defense grid had revealed its true nature as the most sophisticated military network ever created. Every human world was connected through quantum communication links, allowing instant coordination of defensive efforts across vast distances. When Imperial forces attacked one colony, they found themselves facing not just local defenses, but coordinated support from the entire human military network. As Imperial casualties mounted and their offensive stalled, Fleet Admiral Krexmore realized the terrible truth. The humans hadn't just prepared for this war, they had turned their entire civilization into a weapon aimed directly at the Empire's heart. Every colony, every ship, every installation had been designed to lure the Imperial fleet into a trap that was now closing around them. The hunters had become the hunted, and the Empire was learning why humanity had survived and thrived despite being dismissed as primitive by the rest of the galaxy. The aftermath of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had witnessed in over 1,000 years. Across the debris fields that had once been the pride of the Imperial Navy, rescue pods drifted aimlessly through space, their occupants survivors of humanity's devastating counterattack. The mighty fleet that had approached human space with such confidence now existed only as scattered wreckage and traumatized crews fleeing toward the safety of Imperial territory. Fleet Admiral Krexmore's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, limped away from the battle zone with half its hull breached and its weapon systems completely offline. The massive dreadnought that had once been capable of cracking planets now struggled to maintain basic life support systems. Around it, the few remaining Imperial vessels formed a ragged convoy of defeat, their proud formations replaced by desperate flight. In the command center buried deep beneath Seoul, Admiral Kim Soo-jin surveyed the tactical displays showing the complete collapse of the Imperial offensive. After decades of careful preparation and precise execution, humanity had achieved something that most galactic civilizations considered impossible. They had not merely survived an Imperial invasion, but had utterly destroyed it. The massive chamber buzzed with controlled activity as officers coordinated the aftermath of their victory. Status reports flowed in from across human space, confirming that every major Imperial force had been neutralized or driven back beyond their borders. The deception had worked perfectly, luring the Empire into a trap that had cost them nearly 80% of their invasion fleet. "Broadcast this message on all galactic frequencies," Admiral Kim ordered Lieutenant Colonel Lim Jun-seo, who stood ready at the primary communications console. Dr. Park Ji-woo moved to stand beside her, his weathered face showing satisfaction, mixed with the weight of what they had accomplished. For decades, he had worked in secret to develop the technologies and strategies that had made this victory possible. Now, as the galaxy watched, humanity was about to announce its new position in the cosmic order. The transmission began, carried by quantum communication arrays that reached every corner of known space. Admiral Kim's voice, calm and measured, carried the authority of someone who had just reshaped galactic politics through military might. "To all civilizations of the galaxy," she began, her words being translated into thousands of languages and broadcast formats, "the Galactic Empire is now forbidden territory to humanity. Any Imperial vessel entering human space will be considered an act of war. We have defended ourselves once. We will not be so merciful a second time." The message continued, detailing the new reality that the galaxy would have to accept. Humanity was no longer a minor frontier species to be dismissed or conquered at will. They had demonstrated military capabilities that rivaled or exceeded anything the Empire possessed, and they had done so while maintaining the element of complete surprise. On the Outer Rim monitoring station at Wolf 359, Captain Yu Min-seok watched his long-range sensors as Imperial ships fled human territory in complete disorder. The same vessels that had approached with such arrogance now maintained careful distances from any human installation, their crews undoubtedly reporting back to Imperial Command about the nightmare they had encountered. "Empire ships are maintaining distance of at least 50 light-years from our borders," Captain Yu reported, "through secure channels back to Earth. They're giving us a very wide berth. Some of their ships are actually taking longer routes through neutral space rather than risk passing near our territory." The reversal was complete and absolute. Where once Imperial vessels had moved through space with the confidence of unquestioned dominance, now they navigated carefully around human space, like sailors avoiding a dangerous reef. The psychological impact of their defeat had shattered the aura of invincibility that the Empire had maintained for millennia. Commander Shin Hye-jin, monitoring communications from the Deep Space Listening Post at Proxima Centauri, reported an unexpected development that highlighted just how dramatically the galactic balance of power had shifted. "Multiple civilizations are requesting diplomatic contact," she announced, her voice carrying a note of amazement. "Word is spreading that humanity defeated the Empire. We're receiving formal communication requests from the Centauri Republic, the Free Traders Alliance, and even some of the Empire's former tributary species." The news was spreading across the galaxy at light speed, carried by merchant ships, diplomatic couriers, and the Empire's own retreating vessels. Humanity had accomplished what every other species had believed impossible. They had faced the full might of the Imperial Navy and emerged victorious. On the trade world of Kepler Station, alien merchants who had once dismissed human goods as primitive now scrambled to establish trading relationships with the species that had humbled the Empire. The economic implications were staggering, as civilizations realized that humanity possessed technologies and capabilities that could revolutionize galactic commerce and defense. Admiral Kim nodded approvingly as the reports continued to flow. "Tennesseedom, let them come," she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had just fundamentally altered the course of galactic history. "But let them remember we didn't start this fight, but we certainly finished it." The command center's main display showed the new reality of human space. What had once been a small cluster of frontier colonies was now recognized as a major galactic power, its borders respected by species that had previously considered humanity insignificant. The Terra defense grid remained active, ready to demonstrate. Once again, that human space was not to be trifled with. Dr. Park watched the diplomatic requests continue to pour in, each one representing a civilization that wanted to be on the right side of this new galactic order. The Crystalline Confederacy, which had fought a bitter war against the Empire decades earlier, was offering a formal alliance. The Metal Worlds, known for their advanced manufacturing capabilities, wanted to establish technology exchange agreements. Even More significantly, several species that had been conquered by the Empire were quietly reaching out to humanity, hoping to find allies in their struggles for independence. The victory had done more than just protect human territory, it had inspired resistance movements across the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not only survived the Empire's ultimatum, but had positioned itself as a potential liberator for oppressed species throughout the galaxy. The same military network that had destroyed the Imperial invasion fleet could potentially support independence movements and defend smaller civilizations against Imperial aggression. As the days passed, the true scope of humanity's victory became clear. The Empire, faced with the loss of nearly their entire invasion fleet, had been forced to recall military units from across the galaxy to defend their core territories. This withdrawal had created power vacuums that other species were quick to exploit, leading to the collapse of Imperial control in several outer sectors. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would reshape interstellar politics for generations to come. Humanity had demonstrated that apparent weakness could hide devastating strength, that careful preparation could overcome overwhelming odds, and that underestimating human ingenuity was a mistake that could prove fatal. From their hidden facilities and disguised installations, humans had struck back against galactic tyranny and won. The Empire's age of unchallenged dominance was over, and a new era of galactic politics had begun, one where humanity stood as a major power and protector of the oppressed. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive frontier dwellers had become the galaxy's newest superpower, and they had done it by turning their greatest perceived weakness, their apparent insignificance, into their most devastating weapon. The end.